Have you ever looked out to sea and wished you could just dive in and keep swimming, find an underwater world and make it your home? We all need a little escapism sometimes, so this week I'm making a button-eyed mermaid doll. Ordering new skin fabrics online can be tricky, as the colours never look like they do on the colour chart. This cool tone neutral was a little bit more greenish than I expected, but it gave me deep sea mermaid vibes, so I decided to go with the aquatic theme. It's been a while since I made a mermaid, so I'm making a new template for the tail. Her top half will be based on my 22cm template, so I'm using a piece of string to measure around the hips and figure out how wide the tail should be. I want it to wrap around the hips a little, then I'll attach it with button joints. Once I've got the basic dimensions, I just play around with curves on a piece of cardboard until I get the shape I want. I cut the new template out and use it to mark out the shape on fabric. This green tie-dye print has some really interesting patterns in it, so I've picked out a section that looks like sea creature markings. I sew it all the way around, leaving a 2cm gap at the top for stuffing. I'm stuffing all the pieces with some polyester fibre, trying to pack the stuffing in as firmly and evenly as I can without bursting the seams. There won't be a dress to cover any mistakes, so I need to be extra careful with this one. I leave a bit of space at the top of the tail so there's room to joint it to the torso. I've made a sort of pouch from the tail fabric, which I'll stitch to the lower half of the torso. This will also hide the button joint for the head. I think maybe I could have made the tail a little bit wider at the top, but I'll see how I get on with it. I've got some lovely teal green guipure lace to make some fins, but first I need to joint all these pieces together. The arms are bead jointed at the shoulders, elbows and wrists, so they have a lot of flexibility. I found some decorative metal beads for those, so they look pretty as well as being functional. I'll attach the arms later. First, I want to assemble the head, body and tail. I'm attaching the head to the body with a button joint. I'd usually anchor the joint with a button on the upper back, but I don't want that button to be visible, so I'm starting right down at the bottom of the back where it'll be hidden by the tail. The thread goes right up through the torso to the front of the neck, then up through the head. I anchor the thread with another button on top of the head where it'll be covered by the hair. Then pass it right back down to the first button. I adjust the tension until the head moves smoothly, then fasten it off. I'm going to bead joint the lace part at the end of the tail. This guipure lace is gorgeous, but it does tend to fray, so I've put a little bit of fabric glue along the edges. This also helps stiffen the edges and give it a bit of structure. I gather up the top, then attach a large metal bead. A couple of stitches through the bead will secure that to the end of the tail, then she needs some fins. I found a part of the repeat pattern in the lace that looks sort of fin-like, so I've cut it out and sealed the edges with some fabric glue. I'm hand stitching these in place. It can be a little bit tricky sewing through the lace where the glue is, but I want to keep these stitches as small as possible so they don't show too much. There, looks good. Now to see if I can button joint this tail to the body. I anchor the thread underneath where the joint will be on the torso and sew through the corner of the tail. I anchor it with a button, then sew through to the same position on the other hip. Attach the other corner of the tail, pass the thread back through the body and fasten it off. There, one fully functioning mermaid tail. I usually hide the knots and stitches for the shoulder joints under the back of the clothing, but obviously I can't do that this time, so I need to be careful where I anchor the thread. If I can position it just right, I should be able to hide any stitches under the bead. If you're enjoying watching this little one come together, don't forget to hit that like button and let me know. You can also subscribe if you like so you don't miss the next one. Perfect. I'm shading around the eye area with Derwent Chroma Flow pencils. I use the first coat to get the basic shape and position right. Then I'll build it up till it's nice and dark to stand out on that darker fabric. Chroma Flow pencils are quite opaque, so that makes it easier to get the depth of shadow I want. While I wait for the fixative to dry, I'm going to add a bit more detail to the torso. She's not going to be dressed, so she needs something on the chest to give her a little bit of modesty. I'm using some dark blue mulberry paper which has a lovely soft texture. These little hole punches are great for cutting out small shapes. You can find these on Amazon, I'll put a link in the description. This is a flower shape, but the petals are quite pointed, so they come out looking like little starfish. I'm just gluing these in place with some tacky glue. I'll dress her up with some beads and things later, but first she needs a face. I've decided on some 15mm pale green coat buttons for the eyes. I position them in the centre of the shaded area and stitch them through to the back of the head so they sit nice and tight to the face. I use Gutterman top stitch thread for all the hand stitching. It's a lovely strong upholstery thread that comes in a good range of colours. I tried using cheaper thread when I first started out, but it's just not worth it. You need a good upholstery thread for doll making. I'm giving her some gothic eyeliner with Derwent's Line Maker pens. I'm using a slightly thicker pen for this doll, so it shows up on the darker fabric. On paler shades I'd normally use 0.2 for this size doll, this one's a 0.3. I want to try out some of the lighter shades from the Chroma Flow range to see how well they stand out. I'm starting with a white base, then adding a pale blue. That's not really showing up much, maybe a bit of metallic silver. You can see a bit of a sheen, but it's still quite dull. I need something brighter. How about a turquoise blue? That's not bad. It's not really as bright as I hoped, but I quite like it. I'm going to darken it towards the mouth with some deep green. Okay, that'll need a coat of fixative, then I'll start on the hair. I'm using some super chunky acrylic yarn for the hair, which I'm going to needle felt in place. It's a dark green blend with navy blue and gold streaks running through it. I think it's going to look really effective once it's unravelled. This one is from the Signet Seriously Chunky range. I haven't seen this one for a while though, so I think it's probably been discontinued, which is a shame because I don't have much left. As usual, I'm felting it in with a Clover pen style tool and 3 38 gauge triangular needles. Once I've got a couple of rows felted in, I start unravelling the yarn. I'll pull out the loose fibres, then use those to fill in the rest of the scalp, so I don't waste any yarn. I quite like this wild frizzy hair look, but the top section needs to be tied back away from the face. This glass shell bead makes a really cute little hair clip. Now all she needs is a little jewellery salvaged from a shipwreck. I've named her Harper Saltmarsh. If you like this little mermaid, here's a fairy doll I made last year that I think you're going to love. Go watch that one now and I'll see you next time. Bye!